I've been involved in the Gowanus and in adjacent Red Hook for probably about 30 years. It's a funny story. We were first hired by Toll, the developer that preceded Lightstone, for those of you that don't know the history of that site. And we were having the normal working over at the community board, and somebody in the audience got up and he said, "Are you the guy that did Valentino Park?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "He's all right." So it became a little easier for us to get the toll project approved, and the toll project was really the ground for the Lightstone project. One of the I think I want to talk about what was missing, or what is missing, from our project first, because I think that's the kickoff for some kind of design consensus that will, I hope, evolve from this. What was missing, and is always missing, generally speaking, in any kind of developer-generated project, is a community constituency. Developers are deathly afraid of bringing their project to a community-based constituency for any kind of serious and substantial input. And that began with Toll, and because the die had been cast and it was easier for Lightstone to assume what we had done with Toll, we continued. But again, the limited amount of interactions that we had with the community at various times were after the die had been cast, after the decisions had been made, and what we were able to do with our design was adjust it. I believe in not just in science shaping a design, but also community shaping a design, and in helping to determine the program for that design. And that was absent and essentially fell to us to begin. And we felt, to a certain extent, it was our responsibility to look at the project in that kind of larger community and planning context, that we were beginning to make decisions on the toll project that could in fact be utilized by other designers going forward. Because in the history of things, there were about 3 projects that were all on the same track, and for some strange reason, the toll project was selected as the project that would go ahead and test the waters. So without further ado, I mean, some of these are just to kind of acclimate you, but I think most of you know this site and this place as well, or much better than I do. The toll site sits between Carroll Street and 2nd Street. It's a 2-block site. 1st Street rolls in between, as you can see. And again, I think one of the things that I wanted to get out of the way reasonably quickly were some of the I guess you could say, the science of the project. The site itself is raised rather substantially. You can see in the middle of the, I don't know if I can do this. Is there a laser? Is this a laser? Yeah? Oh, hope I don't blind anybody. Okay. You can see the grade differences between existing and what will be built. There are substantial, well, not substantial, but there is a robust street tree planting with bioswale planting as well along the side streets that lead to the canal, and we have incorporated, albeit as a postage stamp, we've incorporated D-Land's sponge park at the end of 2nd Street into the design. And interestingly enough, again, the decisions that we had made with Toll carried through, and to a greater degree, we inherited the sponge park, and we attempted, again, to weave it into our design. Another piece of, I guess you could call it both science and in history, in the work that we've done on the waterfront in New York, including Gantry Plaza in Queens and Erie Basin Park in Brooklyn, all sought to incorporate the history and the archaeology of the waterfront into the design. a narrative thread that was woven into the project. In the early 90s, I was on the Landmarks Commission, and we began a very, very early discussion about those elements that were very quickly disappearing because of the change in the waterfront from commercial transportation and shipping into parks and residential. So this little piece here breaks the bulkhead back into the site and exposes the construction technique that was used to make the canal. The state had a very, very large role to play, and they did, and that was because of the landmark condition of the bulkhead. There was a refusal to allow the bulkhead to be removed, and so it's incorporated into the site. But it in fact is because it's in most cases deteriorated, is buried under sheet pile. But we were able to carve into the bulkhead and create a place where the canal at high tide begins to migrate into the site. I think as Adrian, who helped me out, the park is, there were many, many players that determined the design, and I hope that one of the things that comes out of a summit like this is a way to not eliminate those, but to somehow make their participation a bit more constructive. The City Planning Commission, who are also our partners in the design, through their waterfront zoning, mandated a 40-foot ribbon along the edge of the canal, and the developers chose to build a building out to that 40-foot edge on the north block, and gave us a little bit more room on the south block. The buildings are kicked back on one side to accommodate a turnaround that was negotiated with the fire department. And again, one of the ideas that we felt was really important was somehow trying to enlarge the importance of that space from just a place where cars come around and go back to a place that was actually the forecourt or the vestibule for the esplanade itself. Again, for those of you that have never been here, and I'm sure you have, so I don't know that I need to go through these. These are a series of site images that indicate character. This is our site. And we are actually working on the site that Brad described with Josh Repnitz and Susanna Drake. Susanna and I are collaborating on the design of that site, which is this piece. And interesting enough, hopefully Susanna shares that with you this afternoon, is so different because it's been colonized by a significant tree canopy, albeit volunteers, primarily poplars, but nevertheless, it's one of the things that we're struggling to try to hold on to because it is so unique. So this is our site. This is about 1st Street, this is 2nd Street, and Carroll Street bridges in the background. The logic was very simple. We had always wanted to bind, particularly on 1st Street where we controlled both sides, we wanted to bind the canal to the adjacent community to the west. And to do that, create a streetscape scale that was reflective also of the initial architecture, which had low-scale buildings in the middle of the block and taller buildings at the canal. Open the buildings at the canal and then create this forecourt that led into the esplanade itself. We had always seen, because of the nature of the waterfront guidelines, this 40-foot ribbon yielding series of perhaps prototypes that might be embraced by others or not. And one, there was the esplanade that had the path through the park, and the other, the more traditional esplanade up against the edge of the canal. And that in each one of the spaces the park generated, there was to be a moderate amount of programming. Again, the kinds of things that we were up against were the developer's pocketbook and not some conservancy that had access to perhaps a different set of financial criteria. So this is the plan that evolved, again, moving from Bond down into the site, street tree planting that's rather robust with understory planting and I guess you could say primarily of the bioplanting variety. At first, the site opens up, the buildings splay open, and at the end of the block there is a stoop. We've raised the level from approximately elevation 4 and change up to elevation 8 and change, so it gives us an opportunity to create a series of steps that overlook the canal at the end of the block. So we see this as the more communal stoop. True to our program, the park, the esplanade rather, carves its way through a green space, and at the south block, the esplanade is up against the rail. We've incorporated Susanna's Sponge Park, and as well, programmatically in this building, there is a space that's dedicated to the Gowanus dredgers, and as a result of that, we have responded to it with a launch, and I'm getting the 5-minute sign, so I think I better hurry up. Here are the details or the enlargements of this. Wherever possible, we've created larger areas of landscape with topography. Again, this is a very narrow 40-foot strip, and we're trying to do as much as we can possibly do. The details have evolved, and in one way are responsive to some of the comments that we had gotten at the community board meeting. So we're able to, in a very, very small way, change some details at the end of the process to accommodate some community comments. Again, the sections through, this is that pullback of the bulkhead. This is the existing bulkhead, and we've created another wall behind it where the canal can then move in at high tide and move out at low tide. When the canal moves out at low tide, again, the historic remains of the bulkhead wall are evident. At Sponge Park, we come through the Sponge Park and again incorporate that into the design as well. This is the stoop at the end of First, and the kayak boat, kayak canoe launch at the end of 2nd Street. And with that, I think I'll yield to the next presenter.